truth of the matter is that you have a lot of potential as a child, but none of that is capable of manifesting itself as freedom before you become disciplined. And discipline is a matter of the imposition of order, and the order is necessary, especially for people who are hopeless and nihilistic.
And what does it mean? Well, it doesn't mean, geez, I hate getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work. That just means that you're not very disciplined, or maybe that it might mean something deeper. But I'd start with lack of discipline before, rearranging your whole life. Because you might say, well, I hate getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning no matter what I'm doing, and then it's not your job. I don't mean don't do difficult things. I mean, watch yourself, and if you see that you're doing things that make you hate yourself, then consider the cost of continuing. If something's valuable, you'll make sacrifices to attain it. And that discovery of sacrifice, I think that's what separates it's one of the primary factors separating human beings from animals. Because we discovered that we could let go of something we value in the present, and we would gain something we value even more in the future.
Lay a disciplinary structure on yourself, get the chaos in check, and then you can move towards a state that's freer, because it's discipline first. Like, look, if you're going to become a concert pianist, there's going to be several thousand hours of extraordinarily disciplined practice. That's the imposition of order on your potential, let's say. But what comes out of that is a much grander freedom. And so virtually every freedom that you have in life that's true freedom is purchased at the price of discipline.
That it's not some casual self-help doctrine. It's that if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it, and in a big way, and so will the people around you. And I would say, start where you can start. If something announces itself to you as in need of repair, that you could repair, then, hey, fix it. You fix 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different. I often tell people too, fix the things you repeat every day, because people tend to think of those as trivial. You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you have your routines that you go through every day. Well, those probably constitute 50% of your life. And people think, well, they're mundane, I don't need to pay attention to them. It's like, no, that's exactly wrong. The things you do every day, those are the most important things you do, hands down.
Well, there isn't anything better to have than a problem that's worth solving, that's really worth solving, right? And so the more of that you take on, the more you have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, no matter what. I'm getting up, I'm trudging forward. It doesn't matter what I'm suffering from. I've got things that need to be done. They're necessary. And that gives you that sense of purpose that is the antidote to bitterness. So, yeah, there's lots of reasons to, because I've thought for a long time, imagine you have a choice in front of you, because you do. So here's the choice. Your life is either meaningful or meaningless. Okay, so let's go through the meaningless part first. Because you think, well, of course I don't want it to be meaningless. It's like, yeah, just hold on a second. Nothing you do matters. And so impulsive pleasure is the order of the day. No responsibility. You can do whatever you want. It's like Pleasure Island in Pinocchio, right? Or it's like Neverland in Peter Pan. You're still a kid. You can play all the time. Yeah. Impulsive pleasure and no responsibility. That's the reward for meaninglessness. Well, but then the other side is, okay, well, let's say you want your life to be meaningful. It's like, okay, then what you do matters. It actually matters, right? Make a mistake, hurts you, hurts your family, hurts the world in a deeper way than you think. And you have to be awake to that. And then you have to take it on yourself.
So you're at a particular stage right now, and that stage would involve a particular worldview and the behaviors that go along with that. So the perceptions and behaviors. But it's not enough because you haven't mastered the whole world and you're making mistakes all the time. And then there's other neurological mechanisms so maybe that's a more left hemisphere phenomenon, the instantiation of that identity. Then there's right hemisphere mechanisms that are tracking your errors and keeping track of them. And the errors are an indication that your theory is incomplete. So the errors accumulate and the information around the errors accumulate, and another identity starts to become formulated. And it solves all the problems your previous identity did, but also some additional ones. when you have an aha moment like that, it's the manifestation of that next identity that's making itself known. It's because it's being built from the bottom up. It isn't explicit yet. And then you'll encounter an explicit statement. You mentioned a couple there, and they map onto that. And that's the aha. It's like, oh yes, that's what ties together these things that I've been wrestling with in the back of my mind.
What should happen when you go to university is you should learn how to think and formulate arguments. You should learn to think, speak, and write. That's what the humanities are for. They're to make you dangerous, right? Because if you can think and speak and write, you're deadly. In a complex job, you're exactly what's necessary.
There's nothing you can possibly do to become more deadly than to improve your facility with language. And the way you do that is by reading, especially great things, and by writing, and by thinking, and by speaking, for that matter. But how could that not be viewed as absolutely central to what education is about? You want to be inarticulate and stumble over everything that you try to think and communicate?
Yeah.
How are you going to get anywhere? You don't even know who you are under those circumstances. This massive feeling that's expressing itself, maybe in violence because you can't find the words. And you stumble around and bump into things, and you're clunky and dull, and you're not witty. You don't sparkle. So let's say you take the example of a SEAL who's got it all, but this literacy. What happens to him compared to someone who has all those skills?
If he can't write well, and he's in charge of 6 guys, and one of those guys works hard or does something that deserves to be recognized, this is the responsibility of that leader to write that person an award.
Okay, so he can't reward his good workers, his good soldiers.
He can give him a pat on the back, but a pat on the back isn't going to get him promoted. An award is actually worth some points towards your promotion. And the people that are on that board that are giving that reward, they're never going to meet that leader, and they're definitely not going to meet that guy. There's no bias. It's based on this piece of paper that you hand in. You hand in this piece of paper, they read the piece of paper, and they say award approved or award not approved. Mm-hmm. Or you want to do a mission, and you send that up the chain of command, and it's the same thing. It gets to a certain point where they're just looking at it and reading and trying to decipher this pile of junk that you put together. And by the way, if I'm in charge and Jordan sends me a concept of operations that doesn't make any sense, why would I possibly let you go out and execute an operation that I can't even understand what it is you're trying to do?
Because what I observed in my own career, and it's so interesting, the parallelism is so interesting but not surprising, is that nothing can stop you if you can write. And it's for the reasons you just laid out. It's like when you write, you make a case for something, whatever it happens to be. And if you make the best case, well, then you win. And you get whatever it is that you're aiming at. And so you're adventurous. You want to make a mark. You bloody well better learn how to write. Because if you learn how to write, well, then you can think and you can communicate your thoughts. So not only are you deadly strategically, you become extremely convincing. And then you can go and do anything you want and no one will stop you. And that's never told to people. And I don't really understand why. You hear the pen is mightier than the sword, which is just a cliche unless it's fleshed out.
Tension, for example, is mediated by unconscious forces. And you know that perfectly well. If you're sitting down to study, for example, your conscious intent is to study. But you know perfectly well that all sorts of distraction fantasies are going to enter the theater of your imagination non-stop and annoyingly. And there isn't really a lot you can do about that except maybe wait it out. So you'll be sitting there reading and your attention will flicker away. You'll think about, I don't know, maybe you want to watch Jane the Virgin on Netflix or something like that. Or maybe it's time to have a peanut butter sandwich. Or you should get the dust bunnies out from underneath the bed. Or it's time to go outside and have a cigarette. Or maybe it's time for a cup of coffee. Or it's like all these subsystems in you that would like something aren't very happy just to sit there while you read this thing that you're actually bored by. And so they pop up and try to take control of your perceptions and your actions nonstop. Maybe you think, well, this is a stupid course anyways. Why do I have to read this damn paper? And what am I doing in university? And what's the point of life? It's like, well, you can really get going if you're trying to avoid doing your homework. And then you might think, well, what is it in you that's trying to avoid? Because After all, you took the damn course and you told yourself to sit down. Why don't you listen? Well, because you're a mess. That's basically why. You haven't got control over yourself at all.
I don't know how to start improving my life. Someone might say that. And I would say, well, you're not aiming low enough.
Regulate your habits. Try to get up at approximately the same time each morning. I would recommend that you get up approximately when other people get up. So that would be something in the neighborhood of 7:30 or 8 in the morning, or perhaps earlier, perhaps a little bit later, but you want to stabilize that because your circadian rhythms operate more, fluidly, and your mood is likely to be regulated better if there's islands of stability in your daily routines. Human beings like daily routines, just like dogs like daily routines. And so regulate your sleep. I would say when you get up in the morning, eat breakfast. That's a really important thing to do. I can't tell you how many people I've treated in my clinical practice whose proclivity for emotional instability and depression, anxiety, general hopelessness, emotional pain and gloom and doom, as well as capacity to concentrate, were properly regulated or inhibited or reduced by merely ensuring that they ate a protein and fat rich breakfast relatively soon after they wake up. And that's especially true if they're stressed. And as it turns out that if you stress yourself after a fast, which is of course what you've undertaken if you haven't eaten since the night before, that your body produces enough insulin to deplete the sugar in your blood. And then it's very difficult for you to become regulated properly with regards to your metabolism until you sleep again. And so it can be regulating your sleep, and your breakfast eating habits in particular can be a very effective way of regulating your mood and increasing your capacity to concentrate.